Paper cuts hurt more than they should. That's what I thought as I stared at the cream-colored envelope that had sliced my finger, blood beading along the thin line. The note inside was typed, pristine, anonymous, and it changed everything. My name is Chelsea, and until that moment, I'd been living what I thought was a perfectly normal life with my husband Thomas. We had our struggles, sure, but who doesn't? The mortgage payments were steep, Thomas's business partnership was going through a rough patch, and my mother-in-law Evelyn. Well, let's just say we maintained a careful distance. She's planning to destroy your marriage, the note read. Watch your back. She's closer than you think. I read it 3 more times, my hands trembling. The paper felt expensive, textured. Someone had taken care to choose this specific stationery, to type these specific words. Everything okay, honey? Thomas called from the kitchen. I could hear him making coffee, the familiar morning sound suddenly feeling foreign and threatening. Fine, I lied, shoving the note into my pocket. Just checking the mail. But nothing was fine. Because whoever sent this note knew things, private things. The postscript mentioned details about conversations I'd had with Thomas behind closed doors, about our financial struggles. About the weird tension at last month's family dinner. My phone buzzed. Maya, my best friend, texting to confirm our lunch plans. I typed back a quick cancellation. This wasn't something I could share, not yet. Not until I figured out what was real and what wasn't. Chelsea? Thomas appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. You look pale. I forced a smile, feeling the note burn against my thigh through the fabric of my jeans. Just tired. Big day at work. He nodded, distracted already by his own thoughts. Mother called earlier. She's thinking of visiting next weekend. My stomach clenched. Evelyn. Always Evelyn, hovering at the edges of our life, watching, waiting. The note's warning echoed in my head, she's closer than you think. That's nice, I managed, tasting bile. Thomas didn't notice my hesitation. He never did when it came to his mother. She's worried about us, with everything going on with the business. Says she wants to help. I touched my paper cut, pressing until it stung. The pain helped me focus, helped me maintain my composure. Because now I had to decide, confront the truth in that anonymous note. Or keep playing pretend while my mother-in-law systematically dismantled my marriage. The answer was obvious. But obvious doesn't mean easy. The second note arrived while Thomas was meeting Nathan about their failing business. This one came with a photograph, me and Thomas at last Christmas, but Evelyn had been carefully cut out, leaving a jagged white space between us. I had to take a second job, I told Maya over coffee, carefully omitting any mention of the notes. The business is hemorrhaging money, and Thomas won't admit how bad it is. Maya stirred her latte, frowning. And now Evelyn's moving in? That's convenient timing. She claims she fell last week. Needs someone to look after her. The words tasted bitter. Thomas didn't even discuss it with me. Just announced it over dinner like it was already decided. Men can be incredibly blind when it comes to their mothers. Maya leaned forward. But Chelsea, you look terrible. When was the last time you actually slept? I ignored the question, watching a young couple at the next table. They were laughing, heads close together, sharing some private joke. Thomas and I used to be like that, before the pressure started building, before Evelyn's shadow grew longer. My phone buzzed, Thomas. Nathan's pulling out, he said without preamble. Says he can't risk any more losses. I don't know what we're going to do. We'll figure something out, I said automatically, but my mind was racing. Nathan leaving meant more strain, more pressure. More reason for Evelyn to insert herself into our lives. Mother suggested selling the house, Thomas continued. She thinks. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. That house is our future, Thomas. We agreed. I know, but I have to go. My break's over. I hung up before he could argue, catching Maya's concerned look. Whatever you're not telling me, she said quietly, it's eating you alive. That evening, I came home to find Evelyn already installed in our guest room, her familiar perfume coating the air like poison. She was in the kitchen, cooking Thomas's favorite meal. Chelsea, darling, she cooed, wielding a knife with practiced precision. I hope you don't mind. I know you're so busy these days, I thought I'd help out. I watched her slice carrots, each cut exact and deliberate. How thoughtful. Thomas tells me you're working 2 jobs now. Her tone dripped with false sympathy. It must be so hard, being away from home so much. A wife should be there for her husband during difficult times. The third note was waiting in my coat pocket. I'd found it at work, check the business accounts. Follow the money. I smiled at Evelyn, matching her sweetness with my own. You're absolutely right. Family should always come first. Shouldn't they? Her knife paused mid-slice, our eyes meeting across the kitchen island. In that moment, we both knew this house wasn't big enough for both of us. And I wasn't leaving. I found the stack of open mail in Evelyn's bedside drawer while she was supposedly napping. Credit card statements, bank notices, even personal letters, all mine, all read, all carefully resealed. My hands shook as I photographed each piece of evidence with my phone. Looking for something, dear? I spun around. Evelyn stood in the doorway, her silk robe perfectly arranged, not a hair out of place. No sign of the frail woman who supposedly needed our care. Just collecting laundry, I said, but we both knew better. Funny place to look for it. She glided into the room. Thomas tells me you've been asking questions about the business accounts. That's not very wifely. Neither is stealing someone's mail. I held up one of the opened envelopes. Federal offense, actually. Her laugh was like breaking glass. Oh, Chelsea. Who do you think Thomas will believe? His devoted mother, or his increasingly paranoid wife? The front door slammed downstairs, Thomas home early. Evelyn's face transformed instantly, vulnerability replacing steel. Thomas, she called out, her voice trembling. Darling, could you come up here? Chelsea's been going through my things, and I'm feeling rather frightened. I stared at her, understanding finally clicking into place. You're not trying to break up my marriage, I said quietly. You're trying to break me. Thomas appeared in the doorway, looking between us. What's going on? Your wife, Evelyn began, but I cut her off. Show him your drawer, Evelyn. Show him what you've been collecting. Mother? Thomas frowned. She's obviously unwell, darling. The stress of everything. Open the drawer, I insisted. Unless you'd rather I call the postal inspector? For a moment, nobody moved. Then Thomas crossed the room and pulled open the drawer. His face changed as he sifted through the contents. These are all opened, he said slowly. Mother, why do you have Chelsea's mail? I was trying to protect you, Evelyn whispered. She's been hiding things, Thomas. Planning to leave you. I had to know. The only one hiding things is you. I pulled out my phone, showing Thomas the photos I'd taken. And this is just the beginning. Want to tell him about the calls to our neighbors? The lies you've been spreading? Thomas, Evelyn reached for him, but he stepped back. Is it true? He asked her. The mask cracked. Just for a second, but we all saw it, the flash of calculation behind the concern, the moment of choosing which lie to tell. That's when Thomas finally saw his mother clearly, maybe for the first time in his life. And that's when I knew we had her. The voice recorder app on my phone captured everything: Evelyn's late-night phone calls, her whispered conversations, her carefully crafted lies. But nothing prepared me for what I heard last night. The business is nearly finished, she murmured to someone. Once it collapses, Thomas will have no choice but to accept my help. And that little wife of his? She'll be gone within months. I replayed it 7 times, my hands trembling worse with each listen. The timestamps matched perfectly with the latest withdrawal from the business account, $50,000, gone. Thomas found me in the bathroom at 3 in the morning, retching up bile. Chelsea? God, you're burning up. I'm fine, I managed, but my body betrayed me. The room spun, and suddenly I was on the floor, Thomas's worried face swimming above me. This has to stop, he said, pressing a cold washcloth to my forehead. Whatever's going on. Your mother is destroying us. The words came out raw, desperate. And you're letting her. He stiffened. She's trying to help. By stealing from the business? I pushed myself up, ignoring the dizziness. Check the accounts, Thomas. Today's date, $50,000. Ask her where it went. That's impossible. She doesn't have access. Nathan gave her access. At your request, remember? For emergencies. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Guess what she considers an emergency? The bathroom door creaked. Evelyn stood there in her perfect silk robe, concern etched on her face. I heard voices. Is everything all right? Tell him, I challenged, my voice steadier than I felt. Tell him about the money, Evelyn. About your plans. Thomas, darling, she's clearly unwell. Perhaps we should consider getting her some help. I pulled out my phone, fingers hovering over the play button. Or I could just play the recording. The mask slipped, just for a second, but Thomas caught it this time. He looked between us, realization dawning slowly. Mother? His voice cracked slightly. What recording? Evelyn's eyes narrowed, calculating. Whatever she claims to have, it's obviously fabricated. She's desperate, Thomas. Can't you see that? I hit play. The bathroom filled with Evelyn's voice, cold and clear. The business is nearly finished. Thomas went very still. In that moment, I saw our marriage balanced on a knife's edge, everything we'd built together against the weight of his mother's lifetime of manipulation. I stood up, steadier now, and walked past Evelyn toward our bedroom. Either Thomas would follow, or he wouldn't. Either way, I was done pretending. Behind me, I heard him say quietly, Mother, we need to talk. Maya stared at the recordings I'd collected, her face growing darker with each playback. This isn't just manipulation anymore, Chelsea. This is criminal. I know. I paced her living room, where I'd fled after Thomas's confrontation with Evelyn. But she's already spinning it, claiming I doctored the recordings. And Thomas still hasn't kicked her out? He's looking into it. The words tasted like ash. Meanwhile, she's had 3 days to cover her tracks. My phone buzzed, another text from Thomas, "Please come home. We need to talk." Maya caught my expression. "Don't you dare go back there alone." "I have to. He's my husband. He's also her son." Maya grabbed my arm. "Listen, Nathan called me yesterday. Said he's found something in the business accounts, transfers going back months, all traced to offshore accounts in Evelyn's maiden name." The room tilted slightly. "Why did Nathan call you?" "Because he tried calling Thomas 3 times, but Evelyn kept answering the house phone, saying Thomas was indisposed." A new text lit up my phone, from an unknown number. "Check the safe deposit box. Keys in his office desk, left drawer. Hurry." "I have to go," I said, already moving toward the door. "Chelsea, wait." But I was already gone, driving to Thomas's office. The building was empty, Sunday, but I had a key. In the desk drawer, exactly where the message said, I found a small silver key. The bank was closed, but Thomas and I had access to our box 24/7 through the automated system. Inside, I found documents I'd never seen before, property deeds, transfer papers, all with Evelyn's signature. And Thomas's. Dated 3 months ago. My hands shook as I read. They'd mortgaged our house, my house, without my knowledge. The money had gone straight to Evelyn's accounts. My phone rang. "Thomas. Where are you?" His voice was strange, tight. "Where's your mother?" A pause. "Chelsea, whatever you think you've found. Did you know?" My voice cracked. "About the mortgage?" Another pause, longer this time. "Come home. Please. I can explain everything." That's not an answer. "Mother's gone to lie down. We can talk privately." I looked at the documents in my hand, then at my reflection in the bank's security mirror. The woman staring back at me looked nothing like the person I'd been 6 months ago. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think I will." "Chelsea. You have 1 hour to choose, Thomas. Your mother leaves, or I do. And if I leave, I'm taking everything I've found straight to the police." I hung up before he could respond, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The game had changed. Now we would see who was really ready to play for keeps. I walked into our house exactly 1 hour later to find Thomas and Evelyn waiting in the living room. The mortgage papers felt heavy in my bag, like a bomb waiting to detonate. "Darling," Evelyn rose, arms outstretched. "We've been so worried." "Sit down." My voice didn't shake. "Not anymore." Nathan appeared from the kitchen, his presence unexpected but welcome. His eyes met mine briefly, a silent confirmation. "Chelsea," Thomas started, "before you say anything." "The money's gone." Nathan cut in. "All of it. Every penny from the business, transferred this morning." The room went still. Evelyn's face remained perfectly composed, but her hands twitched slightly. "That's impossible," Thomas said. "The accounts are locked." "Check your phone," I said quietly. "The notifications should be coming through now." He did. I watched the color drain from his face as he scrolled through message after message. "Mother?" His voice cracked. "Oh, darling." Evelyn's tone was pure silk. "You didn't really think I'd let her destroy everything we've built, did you? This way, you'll have no choice but to start fresh. With me." "You're insane," I whispered. "I'm practical." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Chelsea, dear, you've served your purpose. Thomas needed someone to play house with while he built his business. But now it's time for family to take care of family. I am his family. Are you? She smiled, razor sharp. Thomas, show her the papers. He pulled out an envelope I hadn't noticed before. Inside were divorce papers, already bearing his signature. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. When? Last week, Evelyn answered for him. Right after you started making those ridiculous accusations about me. Thomas realized then what kind of person you really are. I looked at my husband, the man I'd loved, fought for, believed in. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Thomas? My voice sounded strange, distant. I'm sorry, he whispered. She's right. About everything. The business, the house. It's all gone anyway. Maybe it's better this way. Nathan stepped forward. Thomas, you can't. Get out. Evelyn's voice cracked like a whip. All of you. This is family business now. I stood there, feeling the weight of every choice, every mistake, every moment I'd trusted when I should have run. The anonymous notes had warned me, but I'd still believed love would be enough. You're right, I said finally, reaching into my bag. This is family business. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Evelyn's voice filled the room, detailing every crime, every manipulation, every plan. And then I pulled out the mortgage papers, the ones bearing their forged signatures of my name. So let's talk about family, I said. And fraud. And exactly how long the prison sentence is for both. The police arrived just as Evelyn lunged for my phone. Nathan caught her arm mid-grab, and she shrieked, a sound of pure, unhinged rage that made Thomas flinch. You ungrateful little witch, she spat at me. Everything I did was for him. Everything! The offshore accounts, Thomas said quietly. The business loans. That was all you? You needed me to protect you. She was going to ruin everything. By loving him? I cut in. By working 2 jobs to support his dreams? Tell me, Evelyn, what exactly was I ruining? The officers entered, 2 detectives I'd spoken to earlier that day, when I'd filed the fraud charges. They took in the scene with professional detachment. Mrs. Harrison? One stepped forward. We have some questions about certain financial transactions. This is ridiculous, Evelyn straightened, mask sliding back into place. Thomas, darling, tell them. Show them the papers, Nathan interrupted, looking at me. The ones from this morning. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, bank statements showing the massive transfer Evelyn had made hours ago, draining the business accounts. Her face went slack as she recognized them. How did you? I gave her access, Nathan said. After I found the forged documents. Figured you'd try something like this. Thomas stood suddenly, moving away from both his mother and me. The divorce papers, he said. They're fake, aren't they? Evelyn's silence was answer enough. I never signed anything, he continued, voice breaking. You forged that too. Just like you forged Chelsea's signature on the mortgage. Just like you've been forging my signature on God knows what else. I was protecting you. You were controlling him, I corrected. There's a difference. The detective stepped forward. Mrs. Harrison, we need you to come with us. Everything happened quickly after that. The handcuffs. Evelyn's desperate attempts to catch Thomas's eye. His deliberate turn away from her. The quiet efficiency of the police as they led her out. In the sudden silence, Thomas and I faced each other across the wreckage of our life together. "I didn't know," he whispered, "about any of it. I swear. I know. And I did." That was the tragedy of it. He'd been as much a victim as I had. What happens now? I looked at the divorce papers on the coffee table, Evelyn's last desperate play, now useless. "That depends," I said carefully. "Are you ready to choose your own path? Or are you still waiting for someone to choose it for you?" He met my eyes then, really met them, for the first time in months. And I saw something there I hadn't seen since before Evelyn arrived: hope. The last anonymous note arrived on the day of Evelyn's sentencing. I found it tucked into my office desk drawer, the familiar cream-colored paper making my heart skip. "Look in the garden shed," it read. "Behind the red toolbox." Nathan was waiting there when I arrived home, leaning against his car with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You sent them," I said. It wasn't a question. All those warnings, right from the beginning. "My mother was like Evelyn," he replied simply. I recognized the signs. The way she isolated Thomas, the financial manipulation, the constant crisis creating. I couldn't just watch it happen again. In the shed, behind the toolbox, I found a stack of documents, evidence Nathan had been collecting for months before sending that first warning. Bank statements, recorded conversations, surveillance photos of Evelyn meeting with shady financial advisors. "Why didn't you just tell us directly? Would you have believed me?" He smiled sadly. "Sometimes people need to discover the truth for themselves." Inside the house, Thomas was packing up the last of Evelyn's things for donation. 3 years in prison for fraud, not long enough, maybe, but enough to ensure she'd never control our lives again. "I found something else," he said quietly, holding out a photo album. Inside were pictures of him as a child, always standing perfectly straight, always wearing the exact expression his mother wanted. I never saw it before, how she'd been shaping me since before I could walk. I touched his arm gently. "That's not who you are anymore." "No," he agreed. "But I'm not sure who I am without her influence." "That's the point," I said. "You get to figure that out for yourself now." The doorbell rang, Maya, bringing dinner and normalcy and friendship untainted by manipulation. As we gathered around our kitchen table, I studied these people who had helped save not just my marriage, but my sense of self. Nathan with his quiet vigilance, Maya with her unwavering support, Thomas with his newfound courage to choose his own path. To new beginnings, Maya raised her glass. To truth, Nathan added. To freedom, Thomas said softly, his hand finding mine under the table. I thought about revenge then, about justice and consequences. About how victory sometimes looks different than you expect. Evelyn had wanted to own Thomas's love, to control it and shape it into something that served only her needs. In the end, she'd lost everything because she couldn't understand that real love isn't about possession at all. It's about letting go enough to let someone choose you, freely and completely. I squeezed Thomas's hand, feeling the strength in his answering grip. To choices, I said. And to making them for ourselves.